My fate is bound up with the monsters now.
G'day users, and the last member of Tier 5 has finally joined the crew, and so I decided to make another one of these videos, talking a little bit about their backstory and then also about their gameplay. But Carla's definitely contributed to be probably the most interesting character so far, and is really contributed to the story of Evolve. Apologies if I get any of this wrong, but if you haven't read the story behind Carla yet, basically, she was a very well-renowned scientist who got recruited to work in a secret facility called the Arcanatan. Now, assuming while she was there, she was trying to find out more about the monsters and where they actually come from, so that, you know, they can try and actually take them out, considering the fact that they are causing devastation amongst Sheer. While she was working at that facility, I'm assuming that's where she became half monster. Now, the reason she actually merged with the monsters wasn't to gain their power, but to actually learn more about them. In the process of merging with the monsters, she didn't realise that actually it is taking over her whole body, and the only reason she hasn't completely become monster is because she's got some biological sort of equipment like the wires and such that are actually stopping it from taking over her whole body. So now she's actually become half monster, she's learnt more about the monsters than anyone else, and has reason to believe that the monsters come from a different dimension. This was actually hinted to us during her teaser trailer.
This may have been a mistake. I am the nightmare behind your eyes. I've seen inside your world.
I am not a monster. I'm no one.
So during that clip, she mentions how she's seen inside their world, and that is because she's actually merged herself with the monsters and has allowed her to see what the monsters are doing and the reason they're actually on Sheer. Although that sounds very useful, it's actually possibly a huge mistake Carla has made. You'll notice, of course, she is half monster and she is half human. Now, although she can see what the monsters are getting up to, it's believed that the monsters can also see now what humans are getting up to and what the humans are doing. Now, there's loads of dropship conversations that really do reveal what Carla is, but in case you haven't seen those, basically Carla does have a Kraken eye, and she is in fact completely blind in that eye. Now, it is believed that the monster side of Carla is slowly taking over her body and can actually see through that Kraken eye and also see everything she does and thinks. Reason for that being very bad is because then the monsters also have insight on what the humans are doing, and of course is going to reflect quite badly on the hunters. If you have listened to a lot of the dropship conversations, you will know that most of the hunter team are very concerned that she's going to actually turn into a monster and destroy them all. If you want to listen to all the dropship conversations, I'll leave a link to a video in the description. A YouTuber called Lone Wolf actually collects all the dropship conversations of certain characters together and then puts them all into one, and I highly recommend you watch it because it gives you a really big backstory behind Carla and exactly what's going on with her. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, if she's seen into the monster's dimension, then where do the monsters come from and what do they want? This is likely something I'm going to have to make a completely separate video on because it's actually quite a big deal and a lot of information. But to cut a long story short, a lot of the forum members got together and actually looked in detail about Carla and everything she said, and actually found out a very, very good theory about where the monsters come from and why they're actually doing what they are doing. Now, there's a massive post about it, which I'll leave a link in the description if you want to read it, about where the monsters come from, or a very good theory about where the monsters come from. Not only that, Matthew Coville actually tweeted out this forum post, likely because it is very, very accurate or likely to be quite true. That post goes into insane detail about where we think the monsters come from and what they actually want, and all because the information Carla has given us. Honestly, I could go into it for hours. It goes into that much detail. Just for those of you that don't know who Matthew Coville is, he is actually the writer for Evolve, and the fact he's actually backed it up kind of makes it, you know, pretty exciting. He also did write a backstory for Carla and how she actually came to be working on the monsters in the first place. Now, in the story he wrote, basically a woman is talking to Carla about working on these monsters or coming to a facility to work on them, and Carla's never seen the monsters before, and she's being shown all the monsters through pictures. This woman lays them all out to show them to Carla, and she shows Goliath, Wraith, Behemoth, basically all the monsters we know currently, but she also puts down two extra pictures of 2 other monsters we haven't seen, and it's insane. Like, Carla reacts and goes absolutely crazy. But then the crazy thing is, a lot of people then were thinking, oh my god, there's a 6th and 7th monster coming. Now, Matthew did say in a stream that doesn't mean they are going to be making a 6th and 7th monster, or a 6th and 7th tier. He said that in the universe of Evolve, there could be loads of monsters destroying loads of planets all over the universe, and way more monsters than we've currently seen. However, it's all down to TRS whether they decide to continue making more tiers and more monsters, and again, it's still unknown whether they're going to do that. Having said that, I've seen that there's been quite a big demand in the community for a 6th tier, and I certainly want a 6th tier, but it is all down to TRS, and the way I see it, they've got to make money somehow over the next year, so I wouldn't say that a tier 6 would be very far-fetched. But anyway, if you do also want to read about Carla's backstory, I will also leave that link in the description. Anyway, that's enough lore for one day about Carla. Now, I'm actually going to answer the question which was the title of this video. Is Carla OP? I think this is now becoming a regular series, especially if TRS continue to make more characters. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about how Carla has been playing out in game and whether we are going to be seeing a lot more of her in competitive play. Well, she certainly has some really interesting utilities. It took me quite a while to actually eventually get her elite, but when I did, it was pretty relieving. And I also quite like the elite skin. The fact it's kind of the albino monster skin is it's pretty interesting. Looks pretty cool as well. So as her main damaging utility, she has Siren missiles. Basically work exactly the same as Kraken Banshee mines. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that shooting them directly at the monster does very minimal damage. So shooting them at a surface first, allowing them to go red and home in on the monster does a far more damaging hit. Especially when you're in close combat, I like to shoot them at the floor just a few meters in front of the monster so they can home in and be a lot more effective. Her next utility, of course, being the armor reducer, which takes away the armor and allows you to do damage directly to the health, a lot like Crow can with his kinetic long rifle. I would say taking capacity with Carla is pretty important for the armor reducer so you can do the most amount of damage with your assault. If no one is actually damaging the monster while using the armor reducer, you do still do very, very small amounts of damage, but that's why you should probably communicate with your team and make sure that you actually use it when they are able to shoot at the monster. But still, I think this utility, if used correctly, will be a huge lifesaver, like when we've seen sort of Crow be able to take out monsters with low health. Carla will be a similar sort of thing to be used, but even more powerful. Finally, her last utility, and perhaps the most game-changing, her teleport pads. Now, you can use these in different ways. I haven't really had a chance to sit down with a team and find out what you really can pull off with her, but my favourite being is having one teleporter in the midst of the map and then have the ability to actually place another one down and then actually jump ahead of the monster so that you can, I don't know, dome, whatever it may be. It really is going to require a lot of communication between your team to actually pull off something really effective, though. You can then perhaps have one inside the dome, one outside the dome, so your team is able to run in and out. Of course, if the trapper runs out, then the dome will just sort of instantly come down. However, it does show for a lot of possibilities that you could use for these teleporters. You can actually put a teleporter down on a downed body, and as long as the teleporter gets up in time, it will actually teleport the body. But that's down to whether the monster actually allows it to get up, and I would have thought that a good monster player would probably be able to see that coming. So a lot of people, it could be paired up quite well with a Lazarus, which I think it could. It's all down to, you know, practice and finding out what you can do. But then lastly, you can use it as something as simple as just having both inside the dome and just using them as a mitigation option. So to answer the question, is Carla OP? I think it's going to be mainly down to whether you can find the right team and the right player to pull off some really insane stuff. I've only really seen her in quick play. She hasn't been used in Hunt 2.0 that much at all, apart from maybe lower ranked players that don't know what they're doing. But speaking of which, I got beaten by an Emmet when playing Monster the other day, and that just goes to show that, you know, the new characters are viable and can be played really effectively if you have the right team. So I'm very interested to see how the pro players will approach Carla and actually use her in competitive play. But anyway, that's my view on Carla. Make sure you check out those links in the description if you want to learn a little bit about more where the monsters come from and, of course, Carla's backstory. But otherwise than that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.